Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I know what that sound means. Time for the paddock F1. Greeny and the cheese. An early trip to Asia for the 2024 F1 season, round 4. We're in Japan for the 38th time. Japan, known for those cherry blossoms, which are in full bloom this time of year.
Full bloom.
Also known for Mount Fuji, cutting-edge technology, bullet trains, and of course, Michael's favorite, karaoke. What's your go-to, sir?
Oh man, I'm actually going to karaoke next week. I got a karaoke date next Saturday night. Anything Tom Jones is good for me.
we don't care about any of this. Any of the travel show. This is an F1 show. We're racing the classic Suzuka. 3.6 miles, only one DRS zone, 18 corners. Oh, and you got some of those classics of Formula One in there. Dunlop, the Degner, Smooth Curve, and of course, you can't leave out 130R. You get the full beans for 65% of your lap. And oh, what a race we saw. Red flag on turn 3 when Danny hits Albon, throwing them both to the wall, restart, and then, oh, the tire strategies took over, my friends. But in the end, Max takes the win. Perez second for Red Bull 1-2. Sainz rounds out the podium. We're caffeinated, we're medicated. Greeny, good day, sir.
As my 10-year-old son, who was watching the race with me at the ridiculous hour in the morning this morning, said, Alb and Rick don't look so good. Albon and Ricardo did not look so good. The worst scenarios for both Williams and Visa RB, and specifically Danny Ricciardo. We did not want to come on. We wanted to talk about Danny Ricciardo this week going into the race, but not like this. Especially this early in the broadcast, as well as a red flag, first red flag we've seen in a little bit. But you're going to see that in Suzuka. It's a tight track, as you saw. You go fast and then you go tight, and things happen. Williams, an awful week. Alex Albon has taken so many steps back between Australia's crash out and blowing that for Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent did not look so great, but you know who did look great? Winning 1-2 for the 3rd out of 4 races. Yeah, that's Red Bull. So we are back off of Arrakis. We are back off of the land of Ferrari, and we are back in the Red Bull zone. Max and Sergio 1-2. Not the margin that we've seen before, the wide margin that Max and Red Bull has put up. So definitely a little closer. I believe 8 seconds between him and or 12 seconds between him and Sergio, and another 8 seconds behind were the Ferraris coming behind them. Carlos Sainz, hello. If it wasn't for his appendix, he could be right at the top of the leaderboard right now through 4 races. He is right up there. Very, very impressive. Extremely impressive again for Carlos Sainz. Coming on the podium. You had that predicted, sir. Prognosticator of prognosticators, sir. Predicting that one. And Charles Leclerc, driver of the day, Charles Leclerc, coming from 8th, I believe, started 8th and finished 4th. So a heck of a day for Ferrari. Not what you wanted to see. But once again, Ferrari on podium. Every race this season, he had a Ferrari on podium for the 4th straight race. That's as good as you're going to get. And they're clearly ahead of the rest of the pack. Mercedes looks like they took another step backwards, and McLaren couldn't get it going, and that's kind of where we stand. So, geez, what were your first reactions to another Japanese Grand Prix?
Well, just Red Bull and Ferrari are, as you said, are just far above everybody else. First time ever in F1 history, 2 constructors in the first 4 races have gone 1-2. A little tidbit of information for you there.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that? Sainz, another great drive. Leclerc brought his game. Didn't bring it in quali, but the one-stop strategy and wooed that to perfection. I mean, it also helped out that McLaren is absolute garbage on their tires. I mean, absolute garbage. They're just ripping those tires up. I mean, what they both finished. They both started, I think, what do I got here? Started 3rd and 6th and ended up 5th and 8th. That ain't good enough. Especially at Suzuka, which is known to pretty much where you almost qualify is where you're going to finish. I think the race win has come from the first row for the last, I think, like 15 straight races or
correct.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. So, I mean, to lose that many spots, but just because you have the massive tire dig that car has right now, and that's not going to be good enough. I mean, Ferrari and Red Bull are far above anybody else. Ferrari's closing the gap slowly a little bit to Red Bull. It's going to take. We'll see what happens after Imola when they bring the major upgrades that they've been talking about, and if to close the gap, closer. But Red Bull's still dominant. I mean, I think Suzuka fits the Red Bull car a lot better than Australia does. So, kind of makes sense that they were going to be where they were. I mean, the real surprise out of those top two teams is really Perez's performance, which was far better than he's pretty much done the entire season, to be honest. I mean, that was such a better performance from the entire weekend through quali and everything. Because usually he struggles in quali, but he put it up there. So it was really good. And then Merck is, going backward. That's just another mess. I think looking back now, I think you see why Lewis made his decision to leave Mercedes.
Every week it gets more and more obvious why Lewis Hamilton left Mercedes. And every week it gets more and more obvious that Ferrari might have made a huge mistake by getting rid of Carlos Sainz. Man still does not have a job next year and is one probably, I would say, potentially the best driver on the grid this season, considering everything. Mm-hmm. I think through 4 races, if you had an MVP I give it to Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, I do. I agree with that.
The guy missed a race and is still right on top of the leaderboard. And again, you got to go back to Ferrari and their base and the way they're building their team and rebuilding their team over the last several seasons. You can see a lot of top guys were coming out and a lot of new guys were coming in. And you yourself and myself, we both talked about, how nervous and nerve-wracking that could be, bringing in new people. But it showed that sometimes 2 steps backwards are 3 steps forwards. And that's what you had here with Ferrari. And now it's finally all the fruits of labor for the last 2-3 seasons and really what you expected last season, at the beginning of last season, is now coming to fruition a little bit later than expected. Obviously, it's a Red Bull world right now and we're just living in it. But Ferrari is clearly the second best team. And anything happens on any single weekend to Red Bull, as we saw in Australia, Ferrari's right there to take 1-2, potentially. And that's as best as you can hope for as a Ferrari fan.
I agree with that. I mean, all aspects are fine. I mean, the strategy call to leave Leclerc out and just go with the one stop and, being able just to pull away there at Lando at the end because he just had way better tire life than the McLarens did. I mean, Leclerc's times when early in the race, before he made his first stop, he was only running a couple tenths off of the guys that were on the newer tires. So that was actually really impressive, to be honest. And Leclerc, deservedly so, got driver of the day. I mean, that was just a great performance. And I think he needed that for his own confidence boost to take that. But the strategy, which Ferrari had been an absolute disaster over the last handful of seasons, seems to maybe have taken a turn for the better. And they're actually making the right strategy calls at the right times.
They're getting their heads together. And a big part of that, like we said, is when guys get too comfortable at the top. And I think we saw that with the previous regime. A lot of guys were just too comfortable at the top and okay with just racking up points constantly and not so concerned about pushing the envelope and just throwing your hands up and saying Red Bull is better at every aspect of this game than us. We're just going to come in third, or we're just going to be happy with points every week or every race. Right. And that was unacceptable. Mm-hmm. We talked about it last show. Do you come for your job or do you come to work? And I think Ferrari Garage and the people in the front office are finally showing up to work and say, we can beat Red Bull. Even if you don't, you can't let them run away. You can't let Max just double everyone's points and just run away with the whole season. And it's over before the break. Forget about after the break. Yeah. It's over before the break. I mean, it was over in June, July last year. You can't keep having that. And you can't just throw up your hands and say, well we're not going to spend the money because we know we're going to be second in the constructors, which Ferrari barely was last year beating out Merck. So, obviously this year it appears very
Well, they
early
lost
on.
out to Merck, so.
Well, I'm sorry, they lost out to Merck last year, so by a couple points. So every race is so meaningful, and I think they're finally getting it together with Ferrari, and at the same time losing it at Mercedes.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Well, a lot of the people that were at Mercedes aren't at Mercedes anymore either. When you're the top dog and people start leaving. The under guys start leaving because people try and pull them to see if they can get that information.
Absolutely. Every business. Every business.
I mean, that's just what happens. So turnover happens, and Mercedes has just gone the wrong direction. It happens.
Yeah, absolutely, it happens. And I mean, can we talk about how Lewis Hamilton looks frustrated constantly out there?
Well, the car's not good. It's a mess.
George Russell is going backwards as well. I think from his driver skill and perspective, he's still making some rookie mistakes out there consistently.
Overdriving the car.
And to top it off, and I don't want to be overly controversial here, but there's 100% media bias pro Mercedes, right? There's stuff other drivers aren't going to get rid of, and I think that media bias through Formula One, wanting Mercedes to be the second best team or willing them to be at least third. They're clearly the fourth best team right now out there. They're clearly the fourth best squad out there. And if Oscar Piastri and the Russell situation today, that was interesting. And Piastri's been fantastic all year as a kid. He had a little bit of a rough one today, but McLaren's seriously looking better than Mercedes right now over the last couple races, and if that continues, F1 does not want Mercedes to look like the fourth best team, but they're not good right now, and they've staked a decade Formula One, making Mercedes the golden boys, and to take a major step backwards like that is against what their marketing and branding is. When I know people who know nothing about Formula One but know who Lewis Hamilton and know who Mercedes is. And know about Formula One Mercedes with no other knowledge of Formula One. They just know Lewis Hamilton. So that branding is massive, and worldwide. So that's why Ferrari was walking in right at the right time for Lewis Hamilton to scoop him up and have that face of recognition, but may not have the second best driver on their team, or may have the second best driver of their current squad with Lewis Hamilton next year. Anything to add before we head over to the Quizmaster's cockpit, sir?
Nah, I think that's pretty much covering it, sir.
Yeah, it's pretty much covering the race. Back to normal.
You got to leave a little tidbit, for winners and losers.
We have plenty to come. Strap on my helmet. I'm going to take a breather here, take a sip of tea, and Quizmaster's cockpit.